Hi.
So why do you fucking hate movies? Very broad. YouTube essayists, which I could say that you kind of fit under that definition, even though it's more particular.
And generally, like the film Twitter, like especially lefty film Twitter, and people like Movie Bob, they will champion this idea that like if you're not like cooming over just the word Batman, then I don't know how that is supposed to last over 3 hours. Don't mind, we can do this all day.
Okay, maybe we'll fight over this one. Dune. I fucking hated this fucking movie. Hello, Adam.
Hi.
So why do you fucking hate movies?
There's never been such a thing as a good movie ever. No movie deserves respect.
True.
So I'm curious. I'm curious what your understanding of this controversy is, if any.
Oh no. Okay, well, you're gonna be disappointed. So I saw a tweet from you yesterday explaining why you don't watch full movies. Now, based on the very limited context that you gave, my assumption is that during certain festivals where you have like a limited amount of time to check out movies, you try to bounce between as much as possible. And if you watch like 20 or 30 minutes of something and it doesn't really like, get your interest, you move on to something else because you don't have time to watch every single movie at the festival. That's what it came off as to me. Do you have a more general take that if you're like watching a movie that you want to review, you're like, fuck it, I watch 20 minutes, even if you're at home and you have infinite time? Or
no,
what?
I don't think I've ever. So in these larger videos, so the video I just published a day or two ago is my Sundance Festival review.
Okay.
And so that's a review of the entire experience of the Sundance Festival, every movie I've seen. Usually I do live streams when I'm making my schedule saying, here are the ones that I'm interested in checking out. And so there's some movies where I'm adding them to my list because I have time in my schedule. And I'm like, okay, well, I might as well have a movie in my at this point in time because it's available, and it might be interesting. It might not be interesting. Sometimes in the first, I don't know, 10 minutes, sometimes an hour. It really depends on the film.
Sure.
But sometimes they're really not worth my time. And when I say worth my time, I think a lot of people don't understand that when you abandon certain films, you free up time for other films. And as I said in that tweet I made, my favorite movie of 2021 is one that I wouldn't have seen if I didn't skip 2 other films.
Yeah. I saw
Now, when what people are misinterpreting about this is, I mean, of course, because it's just being shared around to a bunch of people that don't really watch my videos anyway. They're assuming, which is weird because I think I provided more than enough context in my original tweet, but they're assuming like, oh, he does this with like
every
his
movie.
main reviews or like one of my movies that I've watched in a theater reviews or something. Like, no, I skip through things sometimes if I'm trying to make room in like a specific scenario where I'm watching films at home and I'm trying to cram in, I don't know, 30 plus movies into 5 days. So the last time this controversy happened, and it didn't blow up as big, was when I didn't finish the film Promising Young Woman. And in that context, that wasn't like, oh, I put out a review of Promising Young Woman. That was, no, I was reviewing the Oscar nominees, and in the larger Oscar nominees video, okay, if I didn't finish Promising Young Woman and I just left it out and didn't say anything about it, if I skip a movie, I'm not allowed to say why, or apparently. If I just didn't talk about it, people would be like, oh, why didn't you talk about that one? That was a film from the Oscar nominees, right?
Sure.
So yeah, I don't comment on any parts of the film that I haven't seen, and I make it very clear and explicit saying that I didn't finish it. Here's where I stopped watching. To give people the necessary context of saying like, okay, well, that might invalidate his review. That's a perfectly valid perspective to say that my opinion on the film isn't valid if I haven't seen the whole thing, which is why I give that context. I haven't been manipulative or dishonest about it at all. But people are freaking out.
When you say people are freaking out, is it people in your fan base or like other YouTubers or what?
No, it's so if you look at I highly encourage you to look at the quote tweets for that original post.
Okay, can you link me that tweet again?
Yeah, sure. Hold on. So if you look through, sorry, I'm eating grapes.
You're good.
I suck at Discord. I'm gonna figure out how to send you a message. 1 second. There we go.
Okay.
So the quote tweets on this one. There's some very some very concerned people that
Oh my god.
If I were to categorize, oh, it's so funny.
If I finish every
so
uninteresting wall of text, I wouldn't have time for as many interesting wall of texts. My favorite wall of text, why I don't fuck dogs, was one I added to the TIFF wall of text schedule because I had an extra time to skip YMS Dribble and the Bible. Jesus.
So what's a lot of the a fair amount of the responses are like essentially just people that don't
Understand
watch
what
my
the
content.
fuck you're talking about, yeah.
Yeah.
So people are
They
basically
don't know
taking
that
this
it's like
and they
a part
think,
of like a festival thing.
yeah, they think that I can already see how all of this goes because I've spent a lot of time on the internet. It's basically a bunch of people now that are probably going to be telling their friends in the future, like, don't you think that Your Movie Sucks guy is like kind of a dishonest reviewer? It's like, oh, why? Well, like he reviews movies on his channel. He doesn't even watch them all the time, you know? Like it's pretty fucked up. Like that's like the takeaway.
Yeah, that's gonna be it. And it's really what the ultimate irony about this is, like the moral perspective that people are trying to impose on me, like where they're getting their sort of holier than thou I'm on Twitter vibe from, is they're saying you shouldn't be talking about things that you don't know. You shouldn't be misrepresenting things that you haven't seen.
Mm-hmm.
But none of them could name a single film that I've done on my channel and skipped through.
Yeah, because
like,
it sounds like
they've seen.
It sounds like what you're saying is basically like, oh, like I went to this festival, I saw the first 20 minutes of this, I didn't watch the whole thing, it didn't catch my interest. I'm guessing, right? You're not like giving a full review on things that you haven't watched, right? The whole thing of?
No, it's like a minute blurb.
Mm-hmm.
And it's me essentially saying I skipped the movie and here's why I skipped the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes I even say something like, yeah, it could be, it could be like a masterpiece in the last third of it, but I didn't make it that far.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I'm giving all the necessary information for people to make up their own minds about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what this really comes down to is, like, I've always felt as if film criticism or following like a YouTuber film critic, if we want to call myself a critic, I don't even need that label. I just a person that expresses myself about movies.
Sure.
When I'm thinking of like why someone should follow someone like that, it's about essentially creating a barometer for your own thoughts and opinions about things. So if, let's say, my tastes align with someone,
mm-hmm.
then I might be, I might take their word for it and being, I might take their word for a film over other people, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm just following what they say and forming my opinions around it.
Sure.
Or, if I see a reviewer like Chris Stuckman, who I'm friends with,
mm-hmm.
He rates films a lot more positively than I do, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I can look at a review for something and be like, okay, so if he thought this one was just okay, then I'm probably going to hate it.
Sure.
Right? And in terms of like, certain films will offer different experiences depending on what kind of experiences in life you've had, right? It's
mm-hmm.
subjective to that degree, where a story about like a trans person might resonate differently with someone who is trans, and so in that sense you're able to use that context. If you watch someone who's reviewing the film, you're like, okay, this person's trans and this is a trans story, that might influence how like I feel about the film. Or this person doesn't know any trans people and this is a story about trans people.
Sure.
Right? The purpose of a review is not to give an objective standard that everyone has to adhere to about a film.
Mm-hmm.
The purpose of a review is to express your own experience with the film. And I feel as though being bored by a movie and feeling like it's not worth your time and deciding to end it and not giving it the respect of the next hour or 2 hours, depending on how long the film is, and suffering through it, I feel like that is a legitimate part of the experience to communicate. I think that a lot of the people in the quote tweets there, the majority of them, are acting as though I am commenting on parts of the film I haven't seen. They're acting as though I see a chunk of the film and then talk about what the whole film is. But I've only ever talked about the chunk that I've seen. I've only ever said, this is what I thought of the parts that I've seen. and then I give a number at the end, and I say this number is based on what I've seen.
I think there's two huge things at play, which is kind of interesting to me. So to broaden the conversation to two big things. One is people have a really hard time separating somebody's opinion from an objective declaration of a piece of media, which is really irritating. So I have a music background, and people, when they ask me questions about music, I always have to tread very carefully, because people sometimes, it feels like they want me to give like some objective answer on like, is this music objectively good or objectively bad? Or sometimes, like, depending on the music I listen to, you know, people will be very critical, like, oh, Destiny said he studied music, but he listens to a bunch of lo-fi hip-hop. Like, I don't really think he knows anything about it. He's like, wait, what? Like, like having an opinion on something is way different than starting to give some sort of objective, like, critiques about something, you know, like, was an instrument used correctly, or, you know, is there a wide variety of harmonization, or whatever, right? Like some shit like this. So I think sometimes people get really upset when they hear somebody give an opinion on something, because they immediately think that that's like an objective declaration of fact on that particular thing. That's the first thing. And then this plays into the second thing, which is a broader thing as well. Very broad. YouTube essayists, which I could say that you kind of fit under that definition, even though it's more particular to movies.
Loosely.
Essays are supposed to be arguments for something. When you write an essay, and when we talk about YouTube essays, in particular, we're talking about like a persuasive essay. The goal is, like, if I make a video, you know, titled like, "This is why cars are bad for cities," I'm engaging in a persuasive essay. But I think that when people watch these videos, they don't critically engage with them as arguments. They engage with them as textbooks. Like, oh, this guy is stating all these facts, and this is just right, and full stop.
Which
boom.
is very problematic.
Yes. So when I look at
which creates the fucking Kimba crap.
Yeah, it's a huge problem. So then the issue is, so now when I go to watch your video and I see you say something like, I only watched 20 or 30 minutes of this and I didn't have time anymore. It's like, hold on. You're trying to say, as a matter of fact, that this movie is bad and you watched 30 minutes of it? It's like, that's like the dumbest fucking thing you could ever do. I've lost all respect for you. That's like the feeling that people have, because those two things are combining. The idea that like an essay is a statement of fact, and that any critique of any piece of media is like an objective statement on the objective value of the media. I think that's what people are seeing, and those two things come together to like toxify the fuck out of this particular thing.
Yeah, I feel like it's not. It's well. So when I was saying like it's me expressing myself, like it very much is that. I think it's not just in a critical sense, but it's also in an artistic sense. I wholeheartedly believe that reviews, especially in video format with editing and, you know, editing choices, I wholehearted believe that those are art. Like a YouTube video is art. Your stream is art, right?
Sure.
Like there are artistic elements to these things. And I'm a person where like one of my core principles and what I want to put out to the world, this is reflected in the conversations I have online, this is reflected in the videos I put out online, and the music that I create, is just I want to create something that is like true and honest to myself. I want to create something where I'm not hiding my experiences. I'm not pussyfooting around or being dishonest or omitting parts of myself or parts of my experience. And so if my video is about, you know, my 2022 experience of the Sundance Film Festival, it would be weird to just not mention that there were like, I don't know, 7 movies out of the 35 or something that I didn't finish. It would be weird to just pretend those movies didn't exist, because that wouldn't be an accurate reflection of like A, my experience, B, the catalog of films that I decided to watch. You know, like it's weird, because a lot of these people are coming with the argument, they're like, you can skip a movie, you're just not allowed to say why. Like, what?
Okay, interesting.
I don't it's not like I post these big I wouldn't get any more views if I don't get any more views by doing this than if I don't. It's not like I'm creating videos.
Here what we can. Okay, I'm gonna hold you to the hard questions. Maybe we'll disagree on this.
Yes, please.
So someone in chat says that you score on IMDb films you haven't fully watched. Is that true?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's for my own reference. Because if I don't do that, this has happened. This is a big problem that's happened many times in the past. If I don't score the films on IMDb that I've tried watching, that I feel like I'm giving an honest score based on what I've seen, then I eventually get recommended them again, and I don't remember that I've seen them, and then I find them again, and I try watching them, and then like 20 minutes through the movie, I'm like, fuck, I've already seen this, and I've already tried, and I don't, like, it's important for me to be able to log that information. Now, I could just make all my ratings private, but then that would just be a disservice to people who use my ratings and don't misinterpret them, right? There's like enough of people in my audience that they see a rating and they're like, oh, maybe I should just listen to what he actually has to say in the video instead of treating the number itself like it's a review in of itself. Like, my job isn't to rate movies on IMDb. My job isn't to assign a number to a film. It's to express my experience with the film. So if you're skipping everything I have to say about the experience of the film and just looking at the number itself, I feel like that's a dishonest way to approach what I do, and it's a dishonest way to approach films.
Is there any way to just like mark a film as watched without necessarily having scored
I wish.
it?
If they included that feature on IMDb, I would use it, but there is none.
Oh.
Like, I could remove it from my watch list, but then there would be nothing to log me being able to like put, like, then I would just be like, oh, I haven't seen this.
Sure.
You know, so yeah, and that's the issue that I come across. So yeah, if IMDb implements a not interested button, then I'll use that instead. Otherwise, like, I think a couple people are like, mad at me saying a number in the video by being like, oh, from what I saw, it was this number. But I feel like that's valuable information too, because like, if somebody I'm doing a another Oscars nominations video that'll be released in the next, hopefully, week, because the Oscars are coming up soon. So I've already done the recordings for it. And in that video, there's a movie that I didn't finish that I actually, give a positive rating and say, like, check it out if you want, sort of thing. Because I was like, okay, this is well made, well acted. I just feel like, it's going on for too long and it's communicated all it wants to say. And I'm really busy. And this is like, based on the quality of what I'm seeing so far, it's not going to make my list anyway. And so a movie like that, where it's like, okay, I'm skimming through it, I'm giving my basic thoughts on what I have seen, and I'm giving it a 6 out of 10. If I go back to that, if let's say I'm doing my like 2021 yearly list roundup, and I look at a film like that, I'm like, oh, this was nominated for a couple Oscars, and I give it a 6 out of 10. That might be justification for me being like, you know what? I have some more free time right now. I'm not trying to watch 40 movies in a week. I'm going to give that movie a second chance, and then maybe it might wind up on my yearly list video, right?
Sure.
So like, that's not a bad amount of information to have. Like, to me, this is really just like me providing more context and information, and people saying you should have less context and information. That's what it feels like to me. That might be misrepresentative of like what it is, but that's how it feels from my end. Is I'm giving as much information as somebody could possibly want about my experience with the film, the conditions under which I experienced the film, and my level of respect and attitude towards the film, my reasons for abandoning it, what time I stopped watching the film. Like, I will say, like, oh, I made it about an hour, and then I skimmed through the rest, and, that's about it. So it seems like people are demanding that I omit any number of those pieces of information for their own, I don't know, sensitivities. I don't understand the issue.
The only other thing I can think of is, like, do the IMDb scores, like, influence anything? Like, is there, like, a crowd score or something that people might get mad that, like, oh, well, you rated this a 6 and it's actually 10, you didn't watch it, now you're bringing down the overall score or something? I don't know how IMDb works.
Mean, yeah, technically, like, one vote out of every, like, it's one vote. That would be, that would be the most, like, unethical part about it. I don't think it's really a big deal, because when I give the numerical rating, I'm usually being pretty fucking fair about it based on what I've seen out of the film. Like, I don't think a lot of these films are going to pull a actually there's a certain film. I'm not even going to say the title of it, but there's a film that in the last like half hour, it completely recontextualizes the film, and I love that movie. That is like one of very few examples.
Wait, why can't you say what movie it is? Well, now I'm curious.
Because it would spoil the ending.
Oh shit! Can you type it to
spoil
me?
the ending for people. Oh sure, yeah.
I'm curious.
If you don't care about the ending being spoiled,
no, I'm good.
It's a really great movie. I've recommended it on my podcast. But yeah, it's like a one of very, very few examples where it can actually be like, oh wait, all the bad stuff you watched was actually good, right? Those are so incredibly rare.
Yeah.
That I've never had to. That's never been an issue in terms of like me, commenting on films that I didn't finish. And also, when I do that, because it's strictly in an at-home environment, I've never just walked out of a theater and covered it on my channel. I've never done that.
Sure.
It's always been in an at-home environment. And what I do is I skim through the rest of it. Because I've already abandoned it anyway. I could just leave and turn it off. But I've decided, you know what, since I'm turning it off anyway, I'll skim through the rest of it. And it's like, oh, okay, maybe there'll be like a piece of action, and I'll be like, okay, I'll just watch this like minute or whatever. And it's sure you're not getting the full experience of the film. It's not possible to. You wouldn't get the pacing of it when you're skipping through it like that. But you can at least understand, like, hey, like this. It looks like, despite me being bored with a lack of action at the beginning, it looks as if there's action at the end, and I can say in the review, like, it looks like it does pick up at the end, but I didn't make it that far. It wasn't worth it for me to get there. I don't see the issue.
Gotcha. Okay.
I was really hoping, because like there's so many people on Twitter that are getting like really butthurt over this. And I was really hoping that Cinema Roberto, Movie Bob, I was really hoping that he'd have a conversation with me about it.
Why was he one of the guys that got butthurt over it, or?
Well, I'm looking for someone who's butthurt, but also someone who's not going to like create their career off of this. Because what you'll notice if you go through more of these quote tweets is a lot of people that are mad are people that write letterboxd reviews and get no engagement, and so they look at me, they're like, this guy doesn't even finish his movies and nobody watches me, and then it becomes like this sort of like weird spiteful thing. Like, I don't want to have a conversation with someone like that, because it would just it would open it up to being like bad faith and just like kind of clout chasey. So
yeah, of course. Yeah. I think there's a big problem with people like getting personally invested with a particular review of a thing because they view it as being like a personal, like objective declaration of like fact about the goodness of a media. And I think that poisons a lot of people's brains to like reviews in general, or any of like the quote unquote essay content. Yeah.
I completely agree with you. And what's like absolutely insane to me about this is like, I'm not sure if you're familiar with this sort of debate, but in the film Twitter, film YouTube community sort of like debate, there's been an ongoing one about like objectivity in film criticism. And generally, like the film Twitter, like especially lefty film Twitter, and people like Movie Bob, they will champion this idea that like, no, there's no such thing as objective film criticism, which I agree with. I think that everything is inherently subjective. However, then they start adopting these other arguments against things that I've done, and it would appear that if you follow the logical progression of what they're saying, it's like, oh, well, you're kind of implying that you do believe in some sort of objective measurement here, right? Like that's kind of what's weird to me about it.
When it comes to art, I think there are definitely like objective things that we can say. But it's never going to be about how good or bad something is, because that's always a subjective interpretation. I think it's going to be with respect to a particular thing that's done. It's harder for me to think of, well, no, we could think in film. Like, you might be able to say something like, if I compare one film to another, you might be able to say something like, the director's use of lighting is a lot more varied in this film than another film. Like, that might be an objectively true statement. Now, whether it's good or bad, right? Or when it comes to instrumentation of a song, you might say, like, I think that I like this song, that's subjective, because objectively, this person utilized far more of the orchestra for this part of the piece versus this guy who only did this as like a piano violin duet. And right, so you've got like a subjective feeling about an objective fact, right? We probably agree on this, right? There are objective things that we said about media, but when it comes to reviewing what we like or don't like, or what quote unquote works or doesn't work, those start to border into the subjective more for sure.
Well, because then you're describing like how your brain is reacting to something, not necessarily what it's describing. It's really bizarre, this this whole controversy. Part of the reason I kept quote tweeting it and giving it more engagement is because this is just like one of the silliest things to ever be a controversy. Like for people to be like seriously upset about it, it's like one of the like. It's so silly. It's bizarre to understand. And yeah, some of the amusing responses are the ones where people essentially do this like comparison analogy argument where they say, oh, well, if you're gonna be like that, then I could, if somebody just watched the first 30 minutes of Parasite and then was like, this is boring because it's just a silly comedy, and then turns it off, it's like, well, no, you're proving my argument because it is valuable information. If you were making a review and you said, I hate Parasite because I've only watched the first 30 minutes, not only would it be clear that you were missing the rest of the film where there is a tonal shift, but it's also clear that like it's a weird thing to admit that when you pretend as if the first 30 minutes of Parasite doesn't have a lot to offer. I think the first 30 minutes of Parasite are great. I know you didn't think the movie was amazing, but
have you?
Like, there are other elements to a film than just what happens in it. And when people bring up examples like, yeah, like I just left the movie in The Sixth Sense, and it was bad because they never revealed why people were ignoring Bruce Willis. I'm like, there's so much more to a movie than that. Like, that's such a simplistic, narrow way to judge a film when you're saying it hinges upon just what happens in it. The Sixth Sense is incredibly well shot. It's incredibly well acted, atmospheric, right? There's technical and artistic creative elements at play in the film other than just why are people not talking to Bruce Willis? Like, it doesn't hinge upon... You could have a different ending to The Sixth Sense, and the first... Like, it's not like the first 75% of it doesn't work anymore. It would just be a different movie, but it would still be a well-made film, right? And that's what's absolutely crazy to me about this, is, like, people are calling me out, but in doing so, they're kind of admitting like really weird things about how they view film and just how narrow their perspectives are.
We fought about this a little bit in chat. So two quick things. One is this is why I don't really care ever about spoilers in movies. I don't really like.
I know.
Yeah, because like if a movie is good, it's gonna be good. Like even if I know quote unquote the twist or whatever ahead of time, with some limited exceptions. Like I don't really care if I know the whole movie going in, because if it's an enjoyable movie, I'm gonna enjoy it regardless. One semi exception that I ran into recently. Did you ever watch the movie The Last Duel?
No, I might check it out though.
Okay, yeah.
I heard it. Well, some people were saying it's like underrated. I don't think I'm gonna.
I don't think it would. It's not like a super amazing movie.
For me, I don't really give a shit.
No, I won't spoil it. I'll just say that, like, if you don't know how it's going to end, the third act of that is an incredibly stressful, like, holy shit, part of the movie. But it's like, I'm not going to say that's like an amazing movie or anything. I thought it was interesting. There was that. And then have you ever, I don't know, for anime, have you ever heard of Steins Gate?
I've heard of it. I haven't watched it.
Oh shit! That so I like my anime tastes are very basic. Growing up, I watched all the standard like shonen, seinen shit or whatever, DBZ and all that. But I had a friend that implored me to watch Steins Gate. But it's funny because his review of it was kind of similar to what you're saying. That's like the first 12 episodes are going to be the most dog shit anime experience you've ever watched in your life. It's exactly everything you hate. It's the slice of life, cute girl bullshit. You hate it. You're going to hate all of it. And he kept telling me over that, but he said, you have to make it to episode 12. And once you make it to episode 12, okay, everything that came before it, you will love it and appreciate it. And I was like, okay, fine. But I had to, when I watched the anime, I had to watch that with that in mind. And the first 12 episodes were a slog. Okay, I suffered.
Yeah.
But once I hit that episode 12, it kind of reframes the entire first half of it, and it's my top 3 animes of all time. I love it. It's like one of my favorite.
That's great.
Including the first 12 episodes. You have to watch it to get the context of everything. So yeah, that's like an example of kind of what you're talking about in terms of
exactly like. That's what I was talking about in terms of like recontextualizing. So like that film that I linked to you in DM, it's like that's essentially one of those. Is like if you're not into the first 45 minutes of the movie, that's okay, because that's not really what the movie
is about.
Right? But this is the thing though, is like if let's say I was watching that particular movie and I decided to give up, which I didn't, because I mean it was entertaining in its own way. I think it has charm regardless, even in the first 45 minutes. I would still, if I gave up and I skimmed through it, I'd be like, oh wow, this is like completely different. And if that intrigued me enough, I would go back and be like, okay, like clearly I misinterpreted this, and then continue on with it.
Sure.
Yeah, and again, like just an important thing to remember is like this is. I don't think I've ever done this outside of the context of online at-home film festivals where I have to squeeze in 30-plus movies into 5 days, or Oscars roundup that I do every year, where this year in particular, instead of doing just every Best Picture nominee, I decided to at least watch the first however long of every single nominee. So like costume nominee, like things that I would never even bother checking out anyway.
Yeah.
I decided like, okay, I'll at least just give a very brief first impression of the film. And that's all I'm saying it is. I'm not saying it's a review of like a thorough deep dive, or like a large criticism, or anybody that watches my channel knows like that I'm capable of doing that, obviously. But
here's a question: how did this happen? Take off? Like, were there comments on YouTube videos? Were there tweets? Like, why did this even become a problem? Or did you make this a problem?
I made this a problem, but I mean it's fine, because like, so essentially, I created my video, and then as soon as I woke up yesterday, because I was like still kind of like half asleep, I was like. And then I just scrolled, I guess, too far down in the comments.
Okay.
And there was like one of the comments being like, Adam, I don't think you should be commenting on movies that you skip through, blah, blah, blah. And then one of the comments in that thread reply was like trying to imply that I would have enjoyed a film if I hadn't skipped through that. They're like, but not just saying that because like, oh, they're familiar with my taste and they're like, oh, Adam would have really loved this thing. They were saying the words, no one could have not enjoyed this unless they skip. And that type of like absolutist, like films have to be interpreted in one way and one way only, and it's impossible that someone else could have a different brain that enjoys different pieces of media. That type of shit just gets me like so fired up. It's just like, whenever somebody says something like that, I'm like, ugh. And so I responded in that comment thread because I received the same criticism last year with the film Promising Young Woman, which was not good even when I did finish it. Big surprise. The same thing happened last year, and so I was like, okay, well, why don't I just, I'll make a big comment, which I did. I expressed myself, from what I believe to be pretty clearly and without much room for misinterpretation, but whatever. And then, I posted that comment on Twitter, just being like, okay, in case you have this issue, then here's why I do this. And I think the overwhelming majority of people in my audience agree with me on this.
Okay.
Because it wasn't, it was like even in the YouTube comments, it was like pretty far down. I had to like scroll to find it anyway. And then, just a bunch of people from film Twitter who are upset that nobody reads their Letterboxd reviews or chiming in here. And just being incredibly hypocritical by speaking with authority on things that they have not actually witnessed. Like, at least I only talk about the parts of the movie that I've seen. I only talk about the things that I've experienced. I don't make statements about the entire film experience after only having seen parts of it. I talk about the parts that I've seen. Whereas these people are literally talking about something they haven't seen.
Referring to your reviews, right?
Yeah, exactly. They haven't seen the video. They don't watch my channel. They're not following me. It's like, very very few people taking issue with this are people that actually watch my content.
Okay.
Is there anybody like? Well, I mean, I don't. If you don't want to do this, you don't have to. I'm like, I kind of want someone who is like legitimately upset at me to like jump in on this conversation. You know?
I don't have
like,
any connection to
out,
that like community, so I wouldn't be able to. I don't have any pull there. I was just curious if there was something more.
Anybody.
Yeah.
It's a very, very silly thing for anyone to be upset about. There's people being like, this person deserves no respect in the film community. They're calling me a fraud.
Jeez.
Which, I mean, if I was doing something fraudulent, it would have to be like if I were pretending that I had seen an entire film when I hadn't. That would be fraudulent, but I've never done that. Given more than enough information. What's funny is like this wouldn't be a thing if I had lied and pretended to watch the entirety of a film.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, are there any big like 100,000 sub plus YouTubers that want to fight with you over it, or?
I mean, I reached out to one of them. I said follow for a DM. They followed me, and I DM'd them, and they haven't responded. It's 49 minutes ago. So.
Oh, 49 minutes. Okay, that might be there.
Yeah. So if anybody knows somebody who's not just like a tiny person looking for clout, somebody that I can actually like have a conversation with because they have a real, take a real issue with it, then I would love to have a conversation, but.
Well, damn! If you come across any of these people, and if you need a moderator, because things are getting heated.
Yeah.
Just let me
Are you
know.
like? Are you pretty open all day? If I find one today.
Yeah. All I do is stream all day, so you can let me know if you think you need one.
Okay. All right. Well.
Before you jump back, hold on. Well, I got to pick your brain on two things. Did you like the new Batman movie?
Yeah.
I heard you liked it a lot.
No.
Oh.
I mean, when you say you heard, who did you hear this
That
from?
always means my chat. Because I gave my take on it, and my chat was like, well, Adam really liked it, so you're wrong. And I was like, okay.
I think people on the internet lie. There's things I love about it. There's elements that I love about it. I thought it was super well shot. I don't mind Robert Pattinson as the Batman at all. You know, like he does a good job with it. I like that it was trying to be a detective story. I like that it was kind of trying to be like a, Finchery 7 Zodiac. There's a lot about it that I loved. However, what's really holding it back
firstly,
for me,
did you watch the whole thing? I'm sorry, I'm just
yes.
Okay, go. I'm sorry, go ahead.
It was a movie in theaters.
Okay, go ahead.
What's really holding it back for me is the length. So, if this were a 3-hour-long film where there was if there was more variety in terms of like what was being experienced, tonally or, even like, I don't know, setting wise, like things started to feel really bland and repetitive after a while.
Yeah.
The score for the the musical score for the film, I loved at the beginning of the movie. I thought it was great. An hour through the movie, I was like, this is a pretty good score. By the end of the movie, I hated it. Now I can't listen to it. It's just 2 notes. I don't care if you do a rendition and you're, using different instruments in different scenes. Like, it's just the same 2 notes over and over again. They were playing that throughout the entire movie. Its length is what contributed to that. And also, you can have a 3-hour-long movie, just be a bit more varied in how you approach certain things.
Yeah.
It was just so one note. It was so just monotonous, just the same thing over and over and over again. And that's, if there's certain bands that I listen to where they essentially make the same song over and over again, but it's because I really, really love that one fucking song.
Sure. Yeah.
What the Batman was offering, I wasn't exactly cooming over every frame. I was just enjoying myself. I was like, this is a good choice. I like this. I love this about it. But yeah, that doesn't. If you're not like cooming over just the word Batman, then I don't know how that is supposed to last over 3 hours.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I feel like that's fuck all of you guys in chat. I feel like I said similar-ish things. I think my original take was it sounds weird, but like I liked everything about this film except for like the story and the characters, which made it kind of strange because like I thought that it was it like very much felt like a noir film or whatever, like shot very dark with some very like contrasting like lighting. There were a couple scenes I thought were really cool. The flame, obviously, scene with them walking in the water in the end. Spoiler alert. There were a lot of every driving scene I thought was like pointless. I hated all of them. They were just...
Also, like, how do you brake check like a tanker truck with a Maserati?
Yeah,
then,
well,
like,
we trying to think.
The tanker truck crashes.
Yeah, there was one cool shot in that entire thing, which obviously, spoiler was it was the Batmobile coming out of the fire. I don't know what the point of the Batmobile was. Like when the engine starts up, I thought it was going to do some crazy shit, but then it just basically drives like a normal car. So I wasn't really sure what the purpose of the whole thing was. Something that I almost thought was strange was if they would have omitted the cell phones from the movie, I don't know if they were necessary, but if they would have omitted it, it could have been a film like set in the 90s or 80s. And then a couple cars. Cool? Yeah.
Is if they had it set like in the 60s or 70s and then teased a Joaquin Phoenix Joker sequel at the end. That would have been cool.
I was waiting for that at the end when I heard the Joker laugh. As soon as I heard it, I was like, oh, damn. I almost would have thought that Joaquin Phoenix would have been laughing here or something to like tease into another movie, but yeah.
Yeah. But like his story was set in like the 60s, I think. So then he would have to be an aged makeup at the very least.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, like, yeah, it's one of those things where like Warner Brothers, they're so fragmented in all of their films. Like there's no cohesion in the same way that Marvel does their cinematic universe. Like Warner Brothers is just throwing as much shit at the wall and hoping that something sticks. They don't really have like an overall game plan. So
how did you feel about the new Matrix movie?
I thought it was awful. I thought it was genuinely awful.
Yeah.
I thought it was cringe.
I like to trigger the fuck out of my audience, so if I can find takes that I disagree with them on, I'll play them up because I know people get really mad. I am going to be totally honest.
I heard your take on it, and you said that you thought like the first however much of it was genius, and then it fell apart.
I thought I was very high for the first third. I will be honest.
You were very high.
Yeah, I was very high for the first third, but I thought it was cute, and I thought the whole movie was going to be really cute like that. And then it became actual unironic fucking dog shit. I actually couldn't believe how fucking horrible. That movie defies explanation. Like at the very least, right? You have like John Wick, and we're like 20 years later. We could have had cool action scenes, but we didn't even get that, right? Like, how was every part of that movie so bad? I don't understand.
Yeah, every element is
horrible,
much worse because it doesn't include the same. Like, sure, Lana is back to direct, but if you look at all of the other elements, which are very important elements. You have the same cinematographer for the first three Matrix films, not on this one. Same composer for the first three Matrix films, not on this one. Like, you go down the list and you realize where it's like, okay, well, maybe just Lana being there isn't like what's going to make or break the film. Maybe there are other people involved in this, hundreds of people crew that were actually really important on the first three films. I don't even think the second and third films are great, obviously, but in terms of comparing those to this Matrix Resurrection film, like at least those had some really groundbreaking and intuitive and experimental computer animation and fight sequences, like the fight choreography in all those films. Doesn't matter what you think of 2 and 3, fight choreography felt good. Like
it's cute.
It worked. It worked for the film. They created a Matrix film. Matrix Revolution, or sorry, whatever the new one's called, Resurrections. They didn't create a Matrix film. They created a spinoff. They created something else.
Some weird,
yeah. The bare minimum that you could have done to create a Matrix film, they decided not to.
Okay, final question before I stop harassing you.
Oh, I don't mind. We can do this all day.
Okay, maybe we'll fight over this one. Dune. I fucking hated this fucking movie. Every part of it, except maybe the music. But you liked it, I heard. I actually watched part of your...
We haven't talked about this. I think someone sent me a clip of someone telling you that I gave it a 6 and you feeling vindicated.
Oh, shit. Oh, maybe. Oh, fuck.
Yeah.
Did you like... I thought I watched parts of it, and I thought... Yeah, there were a couple things that you said. I didn't even think that, like... I didn't even think it looked good. Like a lot of people were like, "Oh, like the shots really cool." It's like maybe it's just because
I understand that sentiment.
Yeah, because I came off watching movies
that,
with such lush. Like I think The Green Knight was one I just watched. There was another one where like huge variety. Oh, and Pig, you had these really cool shots with like that were like cinematically dense or like story-wise dense. Like there was a lot of emotion in each shot. And then like Dune just felt like I was watching some guy who was telling me like, "Oh, bro, look at this shot coming up. It's gonna be so cool. It's a big desert. Oh my god, it's so cool." And it's like, okay, like made for IMAX. I get it, dude. Like I don't know. That was a feeling that I had for a lot of Dune.
I'm pretty mixed on that because on an aesthetic level, I don't love it. It doesn't speak to me. Sometimes when people really enjoy the visuals of something, it's almost kind of like a niche. What's the word for it? So some people really like the aesthetic of like steampunk.
Sure.
And if they see steampunk and like represented in a film, like their favorite game will be like BioShock because of it, and it's like that's what visuals are to them. I think that this sort of like deserty environment can spark that same sort of thing in people, not to delegitimize people who say
sandpunks. Okay, I got it.
Yeah, I think it is an aesthetic, and in that sense, it is well made at capturing that aesthetic. There's a lot of really interesting behind the scenes tidbits of information about capturing the visuals. So instead of doing like a regular green screen, like in a green screen environment, they use like a brown screen, and that was so the light reflecting off of the screen would match the light that's supposed to be found in the environment that they're replacing. So there's like a lot of cool, like, okay, they put some effort into doing this about it. I didn't think that the visual effects worked great in every scene. In some of those like weird kind of like inflatable things, I'm like, that looks like CG, and like the shot where Timothy Chalamet the mask comes off in the hallucination near the end.
Okay.
Where he like looks at the camera, it's like, whoosh, and it's like the proportions are so it's like his head's like too big for it, but they put it in there anyway. It's like, oh, that didn't work really well. It's in it's a shot in the trailer. It looks really, really genuinely awful. But there's other parts of the film where it's like, oh wow, these effects really work and the visuals really work. It really depends on the scene. I think that like the nighttime kind of bombing scene had really great visuals. I think that like production design, there's like a lot of elements that I like. But yeah, that's another film where it's just like not only too long, but like the enjoyment of that film is more or less dependent on your expectations for the second film.
Sure.
It doesn't feel like a complete story. Like Kill Bill, it was supposed to be a single movie and it got split into two films. Despite that, the first film still functions as its own story. What they did is they added that scene at the end, like, does she know her baby's still alive? And then it makes a cliffhanger, and it was right after a huge climax with the Crazy 88 and O Ren Ishii. It still functioned as its own film, and it wasn't... If Kill Bill Volume 2 never happened, Kill Bill Volume 1 is still a great movie.
For sure.
If Dune Part 2 never happens, I'm not sure Dune Part 1 is a great movie.
Yeah.
It's really dependent on, like... So... Like, I'm going to rewatch the first one when it comes out, and maybe my perspective will change for the better, maybe it'll change for the worse, but, like, I wasn't attached to a lot of the characters. The casting was a bit distracting. It was, like, way too many of the people who were in everything, you know. So I could see a lot of the actors rather than the characters for a lot of these.
Kind of like the Lion King, where you kept hearing celebrity voices over and over again or whatever. Yeah. When Beyonce... The new one, anyway. Yeah, and I just... For the same crew, essentially, or... is he working with the same cinematographer? I don't remember. But same director, anyway. Coming off of Blade Runner 2049, where there isn't a single effect in Blade Runner 2049 where I'm like, that looks like CG, or that doesn't work really well. There's not a single effect in that movie where I feel that way. And we're coming off of this, like, years later with better technology... And I think a bigger budget, but I guess most of it went to the actors because of the casting. Yeah.
For this movie to have even parts of it where I'm like, that doesn't, that looks like unfinished CG there. That's kind of upsetting because I want to feel like watching a director's filmography that they're improving each time.
I get really triggered when people will tell me that, like, oh, you just didn't like Dune because you can't sit through long movies, or like you just don't have the mind for it. Blade Runner 2049, is that a 3-hour movie?
I think it's a similar length. It's at least 2.5. Right?
Blade Runner 2049 is a long movie. It never feels like a long movie, not to me. At least.
Yeah, it's so varied.
Yeah, that's a
Every
really
set
good
is
film.
Like a different color, and like they're always moving the plot forward. It's always progressing in some way. There's always something new and interesting being revealed. And, you know, whether it's it's such a well-paced, very incredibly,
I feel like
very incredibly varied film. In terms
and it
of,
feels like, and it's so ironic too, being a film about largely like robots and replicants. It feels like that movie has so much more soul, I guess, than like Dune, which feels a little bit more lifeless to me. But
yeah, and then I have to wonder, like, how much of it is the point? Is it supposed to be like this desert planet is lifeless, so we're, you know, communicating that in the film, and therefore the film is good, sort of thing?
That sounds like a Game of Thrones. Like you thought it was going to be good, but we defied your expectation, or not defied. It was what was the term they used?
Subverted.
Subverted. Yeah, we subverted your expectations that any of this would make any kind of sense at all. Yeah, but
yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, like certain people are attached to and gravitate towards certain aesthetics. There are certain aesthetics that I gravitate towards that doesn't, you know, validate or invalidate your perspective on a film, but it can give people some indication as to whether or not, you know, someone's opinion on the film will influence your opinion on the film. You know,
sure. Yeah.
So if I have like a boner for steampunk and I'm like, this is the best movie ever, to like, you know, a steampunk movie or something, then people with that information being like, oh, well, Adam has a boner for steampunk and he likes this movie, maybe I'll like it a little bit less, right?
Sure.
It should always be as a barometer, and if the more information you give can help people decide whether or not they think they will enjoy a film based on what someone else says.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, if you need a moderator,
well, I'll hit you up
know,
again if I find someone. So, what is your perspective? I know you. What's your perspective on like the types of characters? If I wanted to debate someone, like what would you say I should look out for? Like if I can't find anyone with like a decent following.
Anybody that has a well-written
Like
argument,
anyone?
and then check their like Twitter feed to see what they've been saying. So like if somebody, because you'll get a lot of like, I have this, people DM you like, hey, like I have a few disagreements on some of your political stances. I think it would be cool if we could like figure out like, why do you believe in this policy or that? I'd be like, oh, cool. And then I'll check their Twitter feed and it's like, Destiny is a fucking Nazi that hates fucking trans people. And this guy would fucking murder all gay people. And it's like, okay, yeah, no, that's not going to happen, chief. So yeah, I don't know. Just like check their Twitter feed, see what they've been saying. If they message you for a conversation to see where their feelings really are. Yeah, but otherwise, yeah.
Okay. Well, thanks for the chat. I'll report back later if need be.
All right. Well, have fun. Good luck. Be careful. Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
I need to figure out how to leave. I'm really bad at Discord.
Disconnect in the bottom left next to the green.
There we go.
voice
Thank
and
you.
Have fun. Bye. Alrighty, left.